What's up, guys? So it just occurred to me after I had already started about doing this front brake job that maybe I should catch a little bit of footage about it. So bear with me for a second. I'll show you what we're doing. We've got front brakes that were down extremely low. Let me go to the other side and show you what them pads are looking like. So this guy was literally days away from it going metal to metal, and voila, look at that. I've already pushed back the calipers. There is almost no meat left on that pad. Now, why did I push back the calipers? Well, because on this one we're also going to do a brake fluid flush, and I wanted to get all of the fluid that's inside of the caliper out before we do the flush. Just less work. And then, anyway, so while the calipers are still mounted up on the vehicle, I put a line clamp on the brake line, opened up the bleeder, and pushed the pistons back into the caliper. That squeezes out all of the junk that collects into the caliper. And you know, we're going to do a separate video on the importance of clean brake fluid here after I'm done with this, when I do the brake fluid flush. But I'll attach this actually because it's going to be too short if I just do a quick here's how you do a front brake job, which is pretty basic and whatever, but this is what we're going to do. So we pushed back the pistons, got all that junk out. Now I'm going to pop off the rotors, put them on the brake lathe, get a nice finish. Then I'm going to take it one step further and put a non-directional finish on them. That's going to help seat the brake pads in and prevent noises from coming. You know, nobody likes paying X amount of money for a brake job and then having squeaky brakes. So we're going to do a nice non-directional finish. I'll go ahead and start stitching in little videos and make one long one, all right? But before you pull the calipers, if you're going to do your brake fluid flush, push them pistons back in. It helps clean out the junk from inside of the calipers. You'll understand why when we get to the brake fluid flush part. But anyway, stay tuned. All right, so we've got the new caliper mount. We pulled out the slides, cleaned them, greased them, got the new pads in there, got the new silencer clips and wear bars, wear clips in. Anyway, that's ready to go back on. But what we're going to show you right now is my take on a non-directional finish for these rotors. We're on a final cut pass right now, and it is done. So this is what we got. Okay, so we take the circular pattern out, put in this nice non-directional swirl pattern in, and that right there is going to help prevent any squeaks and do a proper break-in procedure on these new pads. Now that break-in procedure also includes a drive cycle where we actually have to heat them up. So anyway, we'll do more on this video when we get to the brake fluid flush. But you know, that's, you get the gist of doing the front brake service. It's not just pop your calipers off, throw some new pads in, pop it back together. You have to do the machining process on the rotors so that you get a true rotor face to the hub of the vehicle, and you don't get the wobble in the pulsation in the brake pedal when you're on hard stops. That all goes into account too when you're talking about emergency braking situations and the distance it takes you to get to a stop. Whenever your brakes are pulsating or there's moisture in the brake system or air, all of those are going to take into account the effectiveness of the brakes to bring your vehicle to a complete stop. And when you're talking about one of these trucks, you know, these things are not light, they're pretty heavy. So getting down to a stop is pretty critical when it comes to an emergency braking situation. But we'll talk more about the brake fluid when we come back to that. Alrighty. Alright, so what we got to do first, we got to suck out as much of that old brake fluid as we can. I use a Mighty Vac hand vacuum. I only use this thing for brake fluid. I'm going to shove it down in there as far as you can. And we're going to pump it. And we're going to suck out as much of that old brake fluid as we can. Because we don't want to just sit here and flush new fluid on contaminated fluid, and it just increases the amount of flushing that we have to do. So we've got air coming up. We're left with just a little bit on the bottom. So we're going to stop that. Now we're going to start filling this back up with new brake fluid, just because I don't want to take a chance on pushing any air down the lines when I put my flusher on here, which you're going to see here in just a second. It's something that I made. I went and got a cheap weed sprayer, and then I got another brake fluid reservoir cap, put a hole in it, pulled the valve core out of the valve stem, drilled a hole through the top of it, and attached the hose on the weed sprayer to that so that I could put this system under a positive pressure. Now, it doesn't need to be a whole lot of pressure. We just want enough to help push through so that we're doing a better job than just a gravity bleed. And here it is. So we're going to pop out my plug, put that down on the master, make sure that's seated, and we're going to give her some pump, give her some pressure. I know, it takes a second. Maybe I can come up with a better way. We have a special tool here in the shop for it. It's just a pain in the butt. I don't like it. So once we get that done, then we're going to take and lift the truck up and start to crack all of the brake lines. We're going to flush until we get good clean fluid out of each one. So it's going to take a few minutes. I'm not going to bore you with watching me open up the bleeder screws on each caliper, but that's what we got. So we'll talk more about this in a sec. All right, so we've got good clean fluid coming out of here now. We've done all 4 tires, so we're going to go ahead and shut off the bleeder. Then we're going to grab some cleaner. We're going to clean all that brake fluid off there because we don't want it to get on anything important. So that's pretty much it. You know, bleeding out brakes doesn't have to be a very complicated thing like some people make it. You know, it's whatever way you use. If you use a hose and you use another bottle of brake cleaner back there, whatever way you use, it's going to drastically increase the amount of good quality brake fluid throughout the whole system, which is the end goal. You know, we said we were going to talk about some numbers, so we're not going to go with the numbers that are issued out by the NTSB, because you can go down a big rabbit hole by doing that. But I'm going to go off of memory from what I remember of that nice class that my former employer put me through, and talk about some distances, kind of, just more like percentages. Now, it's been a while, so forgive me if it's a little bit off, but you'll get the meaning of it. Let's say that you're in a panic situation with nice, fresh brake fluid in your system, and it takes you roughly 120 feet to bring your vehicle to a full stop. Now, the same vehicle, same weight, same panic stop situation, but with old contaminated brake fluid in the system, that stopping distance can increase up to about 145 to 180 or even more, depending on how contaminated the brake fluid is. Now, back to something that I brought to your attention earlier about brake fluid attracting moisture. It's just its natural tendency for its chemical makeup. There's a scientific term for it, I'm not sure what it is, but brake fluid likes to pull moisture out of oxygen, out of the air. With that being said, when you have moisture in your brake fluid, and you go into a panic stop situation, that moisture, because the heat generated from the braking situation, will turn into a vapor, and it decreases the clamping force that the caliper is able to apply to the brake pads and the brake pads to the rotors. So it's pretty important that we have all moisture out of the system, because we don't want it to turn into a vapor due to the heat. Now, all of you know that when you're in a panic stop situation, the amount of heat generated by your brakes, it gets pretty dramatic. So imagine if there was just a little bit of water in that system and it all turned to a vapor. It's not good. It's not good when it comes to the safety of being able to bring your vehicle to a complete stop sooner. So long story short, bleeding out your brakes is a good thing, you know. I don't make a lot of money doing this process here. It's only 8/10 of an hour to go through the whole process, but it's 8/10 of security that you guys can depend on to make sure that you're being as safe as you can on the road. So yeah, I like doing the brake bleeds just because it's a safety measure that should not be overlooked. And if your dealerships or shops aren't recommending the brake bleed service, ask them next time you go in. It's something worth thinking about, and I hope you guys think about it a lot more. Anyway, I want to thank y'all again for tuning in, and if you have any content suggestions, drop me a note, drop me a comment, and we'll see what I can do. I try to get to all of my comments, but unfortunately there's too many of them to get to all of them. So thank you again. Hope you guys have a good, safe day and a good, safe week.